Hello, everyone, and welcome to our November-December version of the Libraries Connecting Texas monthly webinar. We have people are still signing in. We have 7 attendees, and we're expecting 15. So I will give them just about a minute or so before we start our slides. If you have any questions, please either put them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll answer them. You can just let us know if you have any questions anytime. We have a question and answer box too.
Donna, we understand completely. I'm glad it worked.
I'm aging myself, but I always think of the 70s TV show Zoom every time somebody talks about Zoom meetings. I hear the Zoom theme in my head. Okay, I think we've got 8 people. I think it's time to get started because it's about 2 minutes after 2. So welcome everybody. It's really good to see everyone, and I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We're going to go over the summary of LCT funding. Of course, everybody has been funded so far for 2020, but we have other information to just let you know and sort of give you some perspective. And then Jenny will talk about next steps, and Brandy and Kyle will talk about preparation for the Form 471, which we really don't know when the filing window is, but we expect to hear that very soon. And then Kyle is going to talk about reminders about deadlines coming up. So we've got $1.4 million that have been funded to LCT libraries in 2020. As I said, all libraries have been funded, so we don't expect that number to change during the 2020 filing window or funding year. We've got $4.8 million in pre-discount funding to LCT libraries from 2018 to 2020. We're going to hopefully see, well, we're going to see that go up next year, but that's going to be static for right now. And then we've got $2.4 million of the $3.9 million in discounts that's been dispersed to LCT libraries since 2018. So we still have a little bit more invoicing to go. The deadline to invoice for 2019 was automatically extended by the FCC because of COVID. So everybody has a little bit more time to submit invoices. But if your library has not submitted an invoice for 2019, it's really time to get that together and get it submitted. We have 49 libraries in groups 1 and 2 that have 90% or more disbursement for funding year 2019. So we've still got a few more libraries that have to submit their invoices, and then we've got 10 libraries that need to invoice. So then we also have four applications that are missing a certified Form 486. I think one of them is actually the services haven't started yet, and I think we know about the others. So I think we're waiting for some SIPA certifications. So I think we're good on that. I think nobody on this call is one of those people who needs to submit a 486. So I think it's time to go on to the next steps.
Hello, everyone. Look, I'm glad to see you. We're We're going to help you again with next steps. And I like this little picture for success ahead. As Caroline just mentioned, of all the funding that you guys have received through the E-rate program, it's definitely been successful. So, and I know it's hard work. So kudos to all of you. So everybody sees this timeline every day, every time we meet. But it's an important timeline because it really does show a linear depiction of how things flow in E-rate. So we've been living in the orange section for a while since we started filing 470s, and we're still there. In fact, a lot of you are still in the process of selecting your vendors, doing the bid evaluation matrices, and all that good stuff. But we are starting to, and today we're going to start the process of talking about what the 471 steps look like, and that's the green section. So we're moving into the green rapidly, and in January we'll talk more about that, but where we start, where we need to prepare the Form 471 and ask for the discounts on the services that we've selected and competitively bid. So some bid evaluation reminders. We've talked about bid evaluations in October, but you know, this is going on right now, and you guys have done a great job asking lots of questions. I see really good questions coming in. We want to encourage you to continue to do that if you're unsure what to do. So after the bidding period on your Form 470 has ended, and remember there's a difference in the allowable contract date in EPIC because it does not know if you have a Q&A period, if you have a deadline, an official deadline, like most of you have in your service specs document. So just be mindful of what your bid deadline is. Once that comes and goes, you will get, and Kyle is very much on point when he sends out the emails to you indicating that your bid deadline is up, and he'll email with 2 attachments. One is an Excel spreadsheet of a bid evaluation matrix, and the other is a sample award letter. Many of you have probably seen both of these documents, but the bid evaluation matrix is an important thing to complete. And
we have a question.
Great.
So Ed wants to know how long we have to complete the bid evaluations.
Oh, good question, Ed. Well, there's really not a deadline per se, but you want to complete your bid evaluations before. Obviously, you'll have to make decisions, which means you show on your rubric, on your scoring rubric, who won, and then you'll have to allow plenty of time to either send a sample award letter or request a contract from your service provider. So that can take some time to receive the contract from your service provider. And contracts have to be signed before we can certify the 471. So as Caroline indicated, we don't have the window dates for the 471 yet, but we anticipate it'll open in mid-January and close in mid to late March. So, you know, there's really no deadline, except you have to get it all done. And then if you have to go to City Council for approval of the contract, you got to add that time in there too. So all that has to be done before you certify the Form 471.
So you really have until the time you file the Form 471, and you have to file the Form 471 within the filing window. So as some questions are in E-rate, many of them, it's an ambiguous answer.
Yes. Good question. And then once you've completed the bid evaluations, we would like to take a look at it just to know what's going on, to make sure that it's all correct and it has all the bids received in it, just to take a second view at it for you. So if you'll send those to us at lct@eratecentral.com, before you continue with the award letter, that would be great. So another reminder is all bids that you receive within your bid deadline that contain pricing. And I say that because I think I saw a bid for one of my libraries that was a long email. It said, click this link here to see what your services are that you're requesting, and then click here and fill out this form, and we'll send you a proposal once we determine who the best service provider is for you. That's because there's no pricing contained in that email. That's really not considered a bid. In fact, USAC says that that is can be considered spam. So if you get something along those lines that it does not contain pricing that you've requested in the 470, then that would be considered spam. But all the bids that you do receive that contain pricing, even though that you've never heard of this service provider before, you don't think that they can provide service in your area, we still want to score them on the bid matrix. While it is important that you know if they can provide service to you, those are criteria you can put in your bid evaluation. So the template that's sent to you, that Excel spreadsheet, there's different criteria factors you can select that are important to you. So if a local provider or past experience with a certain provider is important in making decisions, then you'll select those as criteria and assign points to them. We also do, if you have not heard of the service provider that submitted a bid, get with us. We'll research if they do have services in your area. And so we do want to make sure that that service provider, if they do have the most points awarded, that they can provide the services that you need. Bid evaluations are important because they prove why and how decisions were made. And so it's important to have a written documentation of that. At times, USAC will ask why you did what you did. And so those are important things to make sure you understand. We do have another question from Sandra.
I answered it online, but it's really good maybe to address it. Somebody, Sandra said that she sent an award letter, but wants to know about the contract and who creates the contract. So most service providers have a sample agreement or an agreement that they have put together with lots of legalese on it. If you're using a small telecom company, you may not have a specific contract in place or that they have for you to sign. It all just depends on you and the service provider that you're contracting with. So my recommendation is to ask them if they have a contract that they want you to use, and you may need to bring that contract to your governing body, your board, your city business office. Sometimes it varies. Some librarians are able to sign contracts and some are not. I know that there are a few independent libraries out there, but many of you are beholden to your city hall, your city judge, or your city managers. So, my recommendation is that you talk to one of us, and we can probably help to guide you on your unique situation.
That's a great question, Sandra. And another couple of points to piggyback off Caroline. It's important that you memorialize that you did sign something, an award letter, the bid, that you accepted the bid. And it's also important to make sure the service provider gets a copy of it and knows that you accepted it. So those are two other critical pieces. So that's a great question. The third bullet here, if you're not sure what the process should look like, if you're uncertain that you have the right sequence or order of steps to take, let us know. As you know, we're all here to help you, and you can pick up the phone and call any of us at any time. It is a good idea to let us review pretty much any of your completed documentation, your bid evaluation template. Believe it or not, there's a lot of inadvertent errors we catch among our own team as well as from clients. So just be sure that you let us review that. Give us a little bit of time to review that before you move forward. We'll take a look at the award letter if you'd like. We'll take a look at the contract once you get it back from the service provider to make sure it contains everything that you need for E-rate. So just let us know if we can review those documents for you before you move forward. And then a couple more bid evaluation reminders. It's important to go in order on a lot of this stuff. So make sure you evaluate your bids before requesting or awarding a contract. You've got to show that you made the decisions and that you scored and determined a winner prior to awarding. So just be sure you're doing that in the right order. And then recently we have seen a couple of instances where AT&T, and it could be other providers doing the same thing, we just haven't seen it, where they have submitted bids within the 28-day competitive bidding period. And then after the bids closed, they submitted a revised pricing in response to your Form 470, but the bids had already closed. So we wanted to talk through that a little bit. It's kind of a slippery slope. So if you find yourself in this situation, let us know. We want to talk through it with you, make sure you take the right steps. But it's kind of an if-then type of situation. So you get a lower bid from AT&T, and let's say you've already done your bid evaluation. And if AT&T is the winner, they're potentially the lowest cost, but they're the most cost-effective provider, then you can move forward with their lower cost. Not a problem. There should be no harm in that. If AT&T if you've done your bid evaluations and AT&T did not win, they're not the highest scored service provider, but it could be that their updated pricing changes the outcome of the bid evaluation you already did. Could be a slippery slope there. There's some steps you can take to ameliorate that situation. You could reach out to all of the service providers that submitted bids to you, including AT&T, because they did submit an original bid within the time frame, and ask everybody for what we call a best and final offer. That gives everybody the opportunity to revise their pricing if they need to, which is in sync to the fair and open competitive bidding practice. And, the other scenario is, you've already done your bid evaluations and you've selected your provider, you've awarded the provider, and then you get this lower bid. Potentially the best thing to do, the best course of action there is just to mark it received after the bid close date and keep it, but just memorialize the fact that you got this after you made decisions. So a couple of scenarios based on where you are in the process, what other bids you've received, and those kinds of things. I don't know if Caroline or anybody else want to add to that.
Well, and it's also, because of that situation, a good idea to make sure that you date your evaluation. Sometimes when PIA reaches out and asks questions, they want to know, in some of the advanced reviews, they'll want to see your evaluation matrix and make sure that you evaluated based on price as the most important, price of eligible services as the most important factor. So it's probably a good practice to date your evaluation when you've completed it, and make sure that you document that date.
Absolutely, Caroline. It goes back to that proving what you did and when you did it and why you did it. So great point. And there is a section on the bid evaluation for your date, for your name and the date you completed the evaluation. So just be sure you fill that in. All right, moving on. I'm going to hand it over.
Hello there, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for the November-December training. I am going to talk a little bit more about how you prepare for the Form 471. Unlike the Form 470, which is an optional form, if you have a multi-year contract, you don't have to complete a new Form 470, but the Form 471 is required for anybody that's wanting to receive discounts through the E-rate program. So everybody must file a Form 471. So award letters and contracts, we've talked a little bit about that already. This happens once bid evaluations have been completed and the decision has been made. You can prepare the award letter to notify the winning vendor that they have won the contract for services. Most service providers, as discussed before, will require that their own contract be signed. It kind of depends on what kind of provider it is, if it's a local or a larger service provider. Something to keep in mind, though, is you have multiple options. You can have an award letter. If your provider doesn't require their own contract, you can have an award letter. And in that letter, you want to include things like the dates of service, the terms, what your bandwidth is. Any information that you are required to input into the 471 will need to be included in that award letter. Now, you can have just a contract where the provider sends you a contract. You've sent them an email, said they've been awarded. They send you a contract. The date signed on the award letter and or the contract is the contract award date. And how this works is if it's just the award letter, the signed and dated award letter is your contract award date. If you then have a contract with your service provider because they require it, the contract award date is still the date that you signed and dated the award letter. We're just attaching the actual contract to it now. Or if it's just the award letter, because the provider does not require a contract, it's got all of your information in there for the purpose of E-rate, that is your contract. You will want to send any signed agreements to the LCT group once you have completed that task. Another reminder, and this just kind of goes hand in hand with the Form 471, you want all of your information on that form to be accurate. They opened up the Epic profiles for us in October, and they will close shortly before the filing window actually opens in January. So we recommend that all the profiles be updated by the end of December. And what that means is if you've got any new library branches, if your square footage has been updated, any information that may be inaccurate on that in Epic, you'll want to update it. So make sure to check your profiles, ensure all of that information is accurate before they close the administrative window, and you won't be allowed to make changes after that point. We have some action items here for you for the Form 471. If you did not file a new Form 470, it's likely because you have a multi-year contract in place. And so you'll want to double check that contract, ensure that it actually goes through June 30th of 2022. Because if it does not, you will need to file a Form 470 for the remainder of the funding year, which begins July 1st, 2021, goes through June 30th of 2022. That's the funding year that we're applying for services for right now. So you do still have a chance to file a new Form 470 if that needs to happen. So you'll just need to consult with one of us. If you have any questions or you want us to review your multi-year agreement, we would be happy to do that. We will also have some come file with us webinars in regard to the Form 471, and that'll start taking place in January. So keep an eye out on those emails to come through.
Hi, folks. Thanks, Brandy. Next, we were just going to discuss some additional preparation steps you can do as we approach the Form 471 window. So you're going to want to collect source documents that are going to reflect information that you'll be using on the Form 471. So if you filed a Form 470 this year, you are going to want to have ready and available a copy of your signed contract, or the agreement, or the award letter, if you neither got a contract or agreement out of that, and have that with all the information that we discussed on previous slides there. In addition, if it is the same service that you are receiving now, and that means the same provider and the same bandwidth, you'll want to have a recent bill that you can review for information on the monthly costs for your service, which includes both the taxes and the fees for that service. Moving to the next slide. We have more information if you did not file a new Form 470 for funding year 2021 this year. What we'll need to do is make sure that you have a copy of a recent bill that once again details all the charges, since you should have the same service this upcoming year as you did this year under an older Form 470. That should not have changed since last year. But again, you'll want to make sure to review your bills and make sure you know what services you are receiving. In addition, you'll want to have a copy of that Form 471 from last year, which would be funding year 2020. A neat little trick for this is, if you've been filing Form 471s for multiple years, you'll want to find the 471 with an application number that starts with 20. Something you'll notice is that each funding year, the first two digits of that application number are going to apply to the specific funding year that you are filing it in. So funding year 2019 would have a 19 at the start, and then 2020 will have 20. This upcoming year will have 21 ... applications. Moving forward, we have some reminders. We still have a number of libraries that Caroline discussed earlier in the webinar today that still need to file BEARs for funding year 2019, and they need to set an invoice mode. At this point, you're likely going to want to file a BEAR, and if you have not received those disbursements yet, please reach out to us and we can help set you in the right track to get that BEAR filed. You may still need to file a Form 498 to certify with USAC the disbursement account information, which the reimbursement will go to. In addition, you may need to file for a BEAR PIN if you have not filed a BEAR before. This will allow you to file a BEAR and move forward from there. So if you have any questions, so Sandra is asking a question on if it is better to request SPI or BEAR billing. A BEAR works as a reimbursement. So after you have paid those bills in full, you can then set the invoice mode to BEAR by filing an invoice to USAC to invoice for the discounted amount. That's different from the service provider invoice mode, which is setting it up with your service provider before you're billed, and then having those discounts applied to your billing as the service provider then invoices USAC for the discounted amount instead of you invoicing USAC for that reimbursement.
Unfortunately, Sandra, that's the tricky part with SPI billing, is when you're not funded by July 1st, or the service provider doesn't, miss you know, there's an error in their billing system, so they don't do the discounts, and it throws things off. So, you know, there's pros and cons to both, but the bear is where you would pay full price and then get reimbursed your discounted amount. So you may want to consider switching to that if SPY is causing you heartburn.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if your service provider has already invoiced USAC for discounts this year and set the invoice mode to SPY, you can't have both during a funding year for one funding request. So you wouldn't be able to switch in the middle of the year. So think about it. If you'll have a couple of months to make that decision as to whether or not you want to continue with service provider invoices or move to billed entity invoices. And so BEAR stands for Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement. You're going to pay your bill in full and then submit an invoice or a BEAR form to get the discounts. And because it requires a PIN and a Form 498, it's something that you should prepare ahead of time for. So that's why it's really important, if you have not invoiced yet, if your service provider has not invoiced your discounts for 2019, you should prepare to file a BEAR. And if you have not submitted a Form 498 and you do not have a PIN number, then you should act as soon as possible, because sometimes it takes a little while to get those forms taken care of. So move quickly.
Caroline is absolutely right about that. There's no time like the present to take care of those. Once you have the Form 498 and filed, and once you have the BEAR PIN filed, you can use those in subsequent years as well, as long as the information for the disbursement account and it doesn't change, and as long as you retain the BEAR PIN. Stacy has a question on password resetting. So Stacy, I think what you may be referring to is the passcode that is sent. Fairly recently this year, the USAC established a multi-factor authentication on the Epic portal. This means that every time you sign in, you will receive a passcode that you have to enter in order to enter the Epic portal. This is sent to your email inbox, and you can retrieve it from there. If you have difficulties in logging in, or you're facing issues in logging into Epic, please let us know and we can help you navigate from there. In any case, as far as the other deadlines go for the Form 486, we have, I believe, 2 libraries that still have at least one outstanding Form 486 that they need to file for the funding year 2020. So if you have not done so, please start moving on that, or please let us know if you need assistance in getting that filed. Lastly, we had discussed the Form 470s. I know at least one of you in this call have not filed the Form 470 for your library for this year yet. So our initial goal had been to have them all filed by Thanksgiving, but we still have 16 libraries that have an outstanding Form 470 that will need to help you in filing for the upcoming year here. So if your library is included in that 16, please do reach out to us, or please check your email inbox for any correspondence that you may have received from one of us. Also do check your spam and junk folder regularly as things may be redirected there. Yeah. Moving on, I believe I'm passing it off to Caroline, who will.
One more note on that, Kyle. The email address that the multi-factor authentication automated email that's generated from that has changed. So I believe Kyle included that in our newsletter on Monday, but be sure you look at that as well, which could potentially cause problems if you don't whitelist that new email.
And I have included the domain in the chat. The email address is let's include everyone here. okta.com. And that's what it is currently, but please do keep the original at usac.org email whitelisted as well.
Thanks, Kyle. So that concludes our slides. Does anyone have any other questions? There have been some great questions today, and I love that. I see that a few of you are on the list of people who didn't have to file 470s this year, and you're very lucky because you have a multi-year contract. So it's good to see that you're here and getting ready for the Form 471. If you did file a Form 470 and you have not done your evaluation yet and you have reached the deadline for service providers to submit the responses, it's a good idea to go ahead and move forward with your evaluation process, especially if you're going to need board approval or some other agency will need to approve it before you can file your 471. The eligible services list was approved by the FCC a couple of weeks ago, and because of that, when they did that, they waived the 60-day requirement that USAC usually has to wait between the time that the eligible services list is approved and the time that they open the filing window. And the reason they did that is so that USAC can open the window at the time they usually have been opening it. So that's we're thinking it's going to be in early January sometime. So we have about a month to wrap up things like getting your profiles updated, wrapping up filing any Forms 470 and all of that stuff. And if you do all of that and you take care of all of that stuff now, it means that the window will be less stressful for everyone. So just prepare ahead. I know it's almost time for the holidays and everybody's going to be closed for several days in December. So just think ahead, get it all done before you leave so that you don't have to worry about it during the holidays. And that said, have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season in December. And if we don't talk to you, have a great new year, and we'll see you in January.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.